When the mind is left in silence for too long, sadness doesn't disappear. It becomes something else. Asterisk, I didn't notice when it started. That's the frightening part. There was no single moment where I decided to sit in darkness, to withdraw, to let silence swallow me. It happened gradually. Less noise, less light, fewer conversations, longer stretches alone with my thoughts. And at some point, sadness stopped feeling like an emotion. It started feeling like a presence. At first, it was subtle, a heaviness, a slow pull inward. The kind of sadness that doesn't scream or cry. It just sits there, patient, waiting for everything else to leave. And once everything did, it felt almost welcoming. That's the part nobody warns you about. When you remove stimulation, real stimulation, the brain doesn't relax. It doesn't rest. It searches, and when it finds nothing, it begins to manufacture something to replace reality. In my case, it manufactured sadness. Silence does something violent to the mind. Without sound, your thoughts become louder. Without light, imagination gains texture. Without other people reflecting you back to yourself, your identity starts to thin, like it's dissolving into the dark. I remember sitting in a room, so quiet I could hear my pulse. Each heartbeat felt exaggerated, intrusive. Time stretched in unnatural ways. Minutes felt swollen. Hours collapsed into seconds. And in that emptiness, sadness grew sharper. Not dramatic sadness, not tears, something colder. It felt intelligent, thought my thoughts. Started circling the same themes. Loss, regret, things I never said. Versions of myself that no longer existed. Memories replayed, but warped. Faces appeared in my mind with unsettling clarity, staring just a little too long. And the more I leaned into it, the more vivid it became. This is where people misunderstand hallucinations. They think hallucinations are visual distortions, monsters, voices yelling commands. But most hallucinations don't announce themselves like that. They begin as emotional distortions, feelings without causes, grief without loss, longing without an object. Sadness is one of the earliest hallucinations of isolation because it gives the mind weight in total sensory deprivation. The brain becomes desperate for meaning. It will choose pain over nothingness every time. Sadness feels deep. It feels profound. It feels real. I started to understand why people return to tragic music, why they rewatch films that hurt them, why they isolate themselves when they're already low. Tragedy recreates deprivation. It removes brightness. It quiets the world. It narrows focus inward. And in that narrowed space, sadness becomes amplified, almost intoxicating. There were moments when I felt watched, not visually, emotionally, like something was sitting with me in the dark, not threatening, not comforting, just there, observing, sharing the silence. I knew nothing was there, but my brain didn't. This is what prolonged isolation does. The brain evolved to be surrounded by others. Silence once meant danger. Darkness meant vulnerability. So when those conditions persist, the brain activates ancient survival systems. It invents presence, and sadness is the safest presence. It knows, because sadness doesn't surprise you. It doesn't attack. It doesn't leave suddenly. It stays, at some point. I stopped resisting it. That's when it deepened. The hallucinations didn't become visual. They became existential. I felt grief for events that never happened. Nostalgia for places I'd never been. A hollow ache that felt older than my own. Memories. I felt like I was mourning myself. And that's when the truth became unavoidable. We don't enjoy sadness because we like suffering. We enjoy it because sadness confirms that we are still something when everything else disappears. In isolation, happiness feels artificial, thin. It needs contrast. It needs interaction. It needs an audience. But sadness thrives alone. It feeds on silence. It grows roots in darkness. Sadness doesn't ask you to move forward. It lets you stop in a world obsessed with stimulation, productivity, noise. Sadness is one of the only emotional states that allows stillness without guilt. That's why tragedy feels meaningful. It slows time. It quiets the senses. It forces the mind inward. And when the mind turns inward for too long, It doesn't find peace, it finds echoes. There were moments when my thoughts didn't feel like thoughts anymore. They felt external, as if they were being whispered rather than generated. I'd catch myself listening to my own inner voice, like it belonged to someone else. This is how identity erosion begins. Without external input, without voices calling your name, without light reflecting your movements, without sound confirming your presence, the self starts to loosen. Sadness becomes a replacement identity. It tells you who you are when nothing else does. You are the one who feels deeply. You are the one who understands pain. You are the one who sees what others avoid. Tragedy flatters us. It convinces us that suffering equals insight, that darkness equals truth, that happiness is shallow and sadness is profound, and in isolation, that lie feels convincing. That's why people in sensory deprivation environments report emotional hallucinations long before visual ones. The brain doesn't jump straight to images. It starts with feelings. It bends emotion first. Sadness becomes heavier, longer, more detailed. It starts attaching itself to neutral thoughts, turning everything inward-facing and dim-dot at its darkest point. Sadness doesn't hurt, it numbs, and numbness feels like relief. That's the most unsettling part. When sadness stops feeling painful and starts feeling stabilizing, the mind has crossed a line. It has chosen sorrow as an anchor. I could have broken it at any point, turned on the lights, played music, reached out, but something in me hesitated because sadness felt honest. It didn't demand explanations. It didn't require optimism. It didn't pretend things were okay. It matched the emptiness perfectly. And that's the paradox of tragedy. We return to it not because we enjoy pain, but because pain fills silence better than nothing at all. In isolation, the mind will hallucinate meaning if none exists. And sadness is one of the easiest meanings to create. It explains why we feel hollow. It gives shape to emptiness. It makes silence feel intentional. The brain would rather suffer than float. So when you sit alone in the dark, when you replay tragic stories, when you feel drawn to sadness you can't explain, understand this. It's not weakness. It's not romanticism. It's survival. Because for the human mind, true emptiness is unbearable, and sadness is what the mind uses to convince itself it's still alive.